think about the reasons why the manosphere pushes that, and I think that a lot of them really believe that all women, want that materialism, that they just want that strong provider, and that's you proving to them that you can provide.
Yeah.
But it's so false. Welcome to the Emily and Todd Podcast. Today, we're talking about a very interesting topic in what we believe the manosphere, specifically the red pill, gets wrong. Before we get started, please remember to like and comment on this video, as it does really help with the YouTube algorithm. So, Todd, we're talking specifically about a topic that a lot of the red pillars give advice to, and it's mostly targeting younger guys in their 20s. I think that a lot of pieces of advice that the manosphere gives is great with like self-improvement, but they really overemphasize, I believe, money, building up money, participating in the hustle and grind. We're talking about like even working 80 hours per week, which I don't understand how you can really have balance in life and how that's really a healthy start. But I was interested to know your opinion, especially with your background, working with guys in this age group.
Sure.
What you think of it.
Well, I'd like to caveat what you said a little bit. I think that the message of the red pill and establishing and getting to the point of building wealth, I think that is actually a very good idea. I just think that the messaging that comes along with that is that you do that in order to have a certain amount of materialism that can attract women. So you're signaling women through kind of either high status, signals of money, like the car that you drive or where you live or the clothes that you wear or the jewelry that you wear, those type of things. And so what I've seen a lot is the message of you got to grind and make a lot of money so you can afford these things, which will give you that lifestyle, which then attracts women.
Yeah, so it's more of the reasons behind it.
I got in trouble for saying this before, the opposite way, but women, generally speaking, are not attracted to guys who are overweight. And so if you're hustling, working 8 hours a week, most likely you're not going to be able to eat healthy because you don't have a lot of time, probably a lot of fast food, takeout, that type of thing. And you're not able to dedicate time in the gym for fitness. And so I think that's super important, not only for attracting women, let's just take that out of the equation, but I do think it's attractive, a very important attracting force. But it's also just important for your general overall health to move your body in some type of way.
Yeah, that definitely impacts even mental health.
Of course, yes.
Yeah, I can see that. So a lot of women, they definitely want a lot of different things within the same man that they're interested in. So they don't want just a provider.
Yeah.
They want somebody that they're also attracted to that is healthy, that they're not going to then have to care for in 20 years when his health declines. And somebody that's like taking care of where he lives, because that's the other thing, right? Like, how is he taking care of his like medical health, like going to the doctor or going to the dentist?
Yes.
Is he cleaning the place where he lives? Does he even have many items in the place that he lives, or is it like a blow up mattress on the floor? Like, there's some balance there. Does he see friends? Does he see family? Does he have those social connections?
Yes.
I think all of those things, like a woman, especially in her 20s, is looking for.
Yeah. Well, back to the fitness thing real quick. And I think what's happened is the reason that that's so important is if you're looking for a man to be around and potentially have children with, you're going to want someone who's healthy because that's a really difficult, hard job to do. And you need a lot of fitness in order to be able to do that and still work a job.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times, and this is talked about in the red pill space, of course, but they really more focus on getting to the gym and getting big muscles. And that part, I don't really feel that strongly about versus maintaining low body fat. Because, again, it ends up being something where the women are going to look at this person and say, do they have health markers that I can see? And the most obvious health marker is, are you overweight or not?
It's so true. Like I think that guys that really focus on building a ton of muscle, it impresses other guys.
Yes, for sure.
Like women really, in general, women don't really care. Like they really do just care about him being healthy. I would argue it's similar for guys looking at a woman. Like he doesn't care if she's a size 0.
No.
He wants her to be healthy, and he might actually even prefer like some amount of curves, like an hourglass figure.
Yeah, of course.
So, it's just going to the extreme. Whereas I think like a lot of women would probably envy, or at least used to envy, the size 0, Victoria's Secret model.
Yeah, that's definitely changed. But I think, if you look at around the world, it's kind of the same as far as that guys really look for that hourglass shape. But so if you look at it from an evolutionary psychology point of view, the reason that was important is that, how we hunted is we were able to outlast animals because we have the ability to sweat. And I think if we're not the number one species as far as endurance, we're really up there. So a lot of other animals, they can run a lot faster and they're a lot stronger, but we can run for a lot longer. And so, again, you take it back to 10,000 years, that's a huge marker. And biologically, we haven't really changed that much. So if you take a photograph of and show it to a woman of a guy who's overweight versus a guy who's a healthy weight, she 9 times out of 10 is going to choose, if everything else is the same, is going to choose that guy.
It just makes sense.
Yeah, but we also have an obesity epidemic going on. So if the message is like work 80 hours a week, how are you, and you may fit into that overweight or obese category, how are you going to spend time to dedicate towards, let's say, forget the gym for a second. Let's just say you're going to eat healthy. You need to do meal prep. You need to probably do some cooking, things like that. And that takes time.
It does.
Versus, going through the drive-through somewhere.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time to even just go to the grocery store, plan it, grocery store, and then cook it, prep it every day.
Yeah. And so when it comes to, let's just talk a little bit about money in general. So I think there's only 3 ways to get money in a relatively quick period of time. 3 real ways.
Yeah.
And the first one is luck. Okay. And
you win the lottery. Is that what you mean?
that can be considered luck, but I would say that you are in that same position as far as luck, because what that means is you're in the right place at the right time and you have a certain skill set. So if TikTok didn't come along, you would have been doing fine, but you wouldn't be doing like you are now.
That's so true.
Right? So it's right place at the right time, having that certain skill set. That's number 1. Number 2 is just straight up privilege. And that's where we're talking about family money, wealth that's passed down by generations. We're talking about just, getting into the top level schools. If you get into Harvard and you make it through, there's a good chance that at the end of that, there's going to be wealth waiting for you. And then the third one, which is a little bit controversial, but it's true, is being a criminal.
Oh.
And so going outside the law, whether that be being involved in drug dealing, whether that be involved in heists, and that could be even white collar criminals.
I was thinking about that too. Just stealing from companies or even avoiding taxes in some way.
Exactly. So those are the kind of 3 ways that if you want to build wealth in a short period of time, that you can do that. So the reality is that most people in our audience, most people in the world aren't in any of those 3 positions. So they're going to have to build wealth over the long haul. And that's what we can kind of speak about today is, kind of how to do that, but also how to do that in a way where you're not having to work 80 hours a week. But I think it goes against some of the manosphere, markers.
What a lot of people need to keep in mind is that, first of all, we are seeing this on social media, and there's already a high level of lying occurring on social media. Like, it's very likely that those aren't even their cars,
Yeah.
that that's not even where they live. There was a place that I found out about in LA that it was a building, and it was designed to make it look like it was inside of a private jet. And they rented the space out so that people could go in and just take photos,
Yes.
legit photos, just to post on social media to present this to the world that they were, wealthy enough, or they knew somebody, they were connected enough to be able to be on a private jet.
Yes.
So it's definitely like that image right away, you should question it. And then I would say, secondly, that for like big creators that are pushing this message, I would even say like for Andrew Tate, he probably was making a lot of money, and he's a criminal. So yeah, he was that third category. But even like somebody not exactly him, but isn't doing criminal activity as far as we know, maybe they just have grown a big audience. They've kind of fallen into that first category of making a lot of money. Like, that's not realistic for the average person.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
not going to happen to you.
Yes. Yeah, the average person is not going to blow up on TikTok or YouTube or, become an influencer on Instagram. And even if they are, they may be in one of those fake private jets.
Yeah.
But it's something that that's what's shown as the ideal.
Yeah.
And the reality is that 99.9% of the population will never fly on a private jet. I hate to, break it to people, but that's the reality. And so I think it's building wealth over time, and it's not sexy about how we do it.
Yeah, it's kind of boring, right?
Yes. Well, it's comparatively to what you would hear.
Yeah.
And I think, you could go to 100 different channels and learn how to build wealth, but the smart guys are all going to kind of say the same thing. And I say guys, I don't mean just men.
Yeah.
That it's something that you have to build over time. And the biggest thing I think people need to avoid is what they call lifestyle inflation. And so essentially what that means is that as you kind of move up the corporate ladder and earn more money, your lifestyle goes along with that. So the way to build wealth over a long period of time, and I'm talking about probably 30, 40 years potentially, is you have to have a lifestyle that is living below your means of your income. And so that is something where it takes that time, and it takes an extreme amount of discipline, because it's very attractive to go buy that expensive car and then get a car payment. And how many people do we know do this?
So many.
Exactly.
I would say the majority of people that I know.
Exactly. And so I think the reality should be is when you're first starting out, you get a car and you buy it in cash. And I'm not talking about an expensive car. I'm talking about a car that works. And
Gets
you drive
from point A to point B.
And you drive that into the ground until you have saved up enough money to then buy another car.
Yeah.
And what you do is, if you're living below your means, you take at least, I would say the minimum would be 10 to 15%. And you invest that. And the first thing to invest that in is a Roth IRA. And the reason that is because when you can cash that out at 55, you do not get taxed on that. And a lot of times, if you have an employer, they may match or contribute as well. So it's really getting to the point of saying, I'm going to live beneath my means, and if I have any extra money, I'm going to invest that for the future. And I think that the reason that this is important is, if you're planning on ever getting married or having children or having a family, then you want to get to the point where you have invested, because the things that are depreciating assets are just going to take away from your ability to, and forget about family for a second, just even for yourself. to just be able to long-term take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And so the more that you have to invest, the better, even if it's only, $200 every couple months or something like that.
Yeah.
Start somewhere. And what will happen is that will appreciate over time.
Mm-hmm. It's tough. I understand why people have a difficult time with it, because I remember when I was in my 20s, like into my 30s, thinking of future me in my 30s felt like it was so far away and that I had so much time.
Yes.
But people have to remember it actually comes very quickly. So if
Yes.
you're 21, or let's say 18, because you're looking at your first car, right? Maybe you're still in high school. You want to get the nice shiny car because, first of all, maybe your parents do fairly well. And that's the type of car that they would drive. So it's just kind of expected. Secondly, you might want to impress the girls.
Yeah.
But what you're really doing by doing that is you're taking away money from potentially like your future life and your future family.
Exactly.
So if you can just think of it as, the girls around you that you're trying to impress, first of all, they're probably not even going to be in your life in 10 years from then.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're really not going to care
Yeah.
where you are in life and how your finances are. So, have that mindset to think about just saving it instead and living minimally. And it's really hard. I heard from a friend recently, his strategy is to whatever raise he gets at work, he just punts that exact raise amount back into the 401k. And I think that's an excellent way so that you're not living beyond your means, right? Like you don't even see that money. So it doesn't have any positive or negative impact on you right in that moment.
Yes.
But then it has the future positive impact.
Exactly. So yeah, that's where it's not sexy. It's saying, okay, when I'm young, I need to. So for example, when it comes to housing, I need to keep that as low as possible without having to live in the slums. So how do I do that? Do I get a roommate? Do I just get a studio apartment? If you're just starting out, or do I even live at home with my parents for a few years and be able to, if you're living with your parents, you should be able to put probably 50% of your money away.
For sure. Yeah.
And so from the housing point of view, I think it's kind of keeping those costs as low as possible. When it comes to transportation, if you don't live in a city and you need a car, keeping that as low as possible.
Do you think, though, that guys that are really young, so let's say they're somewhere between 18 and 25, should they live at home in order to save money? Because I think that is kind of the easier way.
I don't think it's a bad idea, to be honest with you, because by the time you're 25, especially if you have gone to college and maybe you do have student loans, because that's the only really debt that I feel like is acceptable is student loans and a mortgage. And even then, it's something where, if you hold out long enough, you potentially could buy your first house in cash. And there's a lot of controversy around that, because some people say don't do that and some people say do it. But I'm just personally and I always have been this way, very adverse to debt. And so, because every time that I had any debt, I felt like I was not working for myself. I was working for someone else to pay off that debt. And so it really made me uncomfortable doing that. And I think the average household is like $8,000 in debt or something like that. It might be even more. And that's just credit card debt. So,
and they say average pay right now is somewhere around 50-some thousand.
No, it's not even that. I think the last time I read, it was 31,000.
So think about like how long it would take somebody to even just pay off that $8,000 in debt.
Yeah, exactly. Especially since a lot of that's going to be interest if they're just paying minimum payments. So and the thing with the credit card debt, unless it's an emergency, like everybody should have a credit card for an emergency, it's something that a lot of people are just buying things that they don't need or they don't use. And it's something that you're going to get, used to, no matter what your lifestyle is. So the reality is that if you start off, and we were kind of talking about this yesterday, like when we first moved into the dorms, when we were, in college, we saw that as freedom, and it was great. You like didn't have your parents, over, waking you up and being in your space and things like that.
Yeah.
But we talk about that now. If we had to go back and live in the dorms,
It'd be
that
awful.
would be awful. It would be,
No thanks.
It would be terrible. It'd be one step above a prison cell, especially if you have a bad roommate, right?
Yes.
So when you're young, you can take a lot more punishment as far as that's concerned. And so I really believe that that's what young men should do, is strive for balance as far as saying, okay, I'm going to work and I'm going to try to put as much money away as possible. I'm going to stay away from the materialistic messages and say, you know what, if a woman only wants me because I have a certain car or watch or I dress a certain way, like for example, right now, and I was educating you about this the other day offline, is that, there's this huge renaissance like in the sneaker business. And people are going out there and spending, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 on a pair of shoes. And a lot of times they won't even wear them.
Yeah.
And if they do, it's something where, they feel like there's a lot of status attached to that. And there's huge YouTube channels that are just dedicated to this. But the reality is that, and I'm not saying anything against sneakerheads, but if you're spending all your extra income on shoes, unless you're planning on reselling them,
Yeah.
which is fine, because then that's actually it could be a good side hustle. But if you're just a collector, like, I don't know, I don't get that, except for they feel good about like building that collection. And I don't want to take away people's good feelings, but would you rather be broke and have a lot of sneakers, or have a few pairs of sneakers maybe they really care about, and then have more money invested?
It's the balance that matters, I think. So it definitely depends on like how much money they have available to spend. And it depends, I think, on how passionate they are about it. Because I get like when somebody's really passionate about one thing, the problem is that you can't have 5 passions that cost a lot of money.
No.
Like you're not going to get very far. So if there is like one thing that you really enjoy, I think about even just getting coffee out. Like so many people will be like, do not spend mony out.
Yeah,
right?
But
Don't go to Starbucks every day.
You know what? I actually just saw, I read something that said that the average person in their 20s spends $8,000 a year on coffee.
Now, I don't spend that much.
But because they go to Starbucks so much and it's expensive. But think about if you were just able to make coffee at home.
How much you would save.
How much you would save. It would probably be $500. I don't drink coffee, so I don't know. It would probably be $500 versus $8,000 if you made coffee at home every day.
This is the thing. Like, I think that people that go to get their coffee out every day, I think that they are so desensitized that it's not even like they don't even enjoy it. It's just the normal thing. It's like getting ready in the morning.
Yes.
No big deal. But then I think of like somebody like me that's very modest with their spending, and I've cut out coffee quite often. For me to take like 2 days a week in which I do go out and get coffee, it feels really good. And it just kind of like sets a good tone for my day. So in that case, like I think that you don't have to cut yourself off from absolutely everything that you would enjoy. Like you want to be able to still have some amount, but you got to budget and you got to figure out what that amount is for yourself.
Yes. But I would really advise as far as saying, okay, so in order to be attracted to a woman.
Yeah.
So first of all, I think let's talk about like most women who are out there who are single are looking for long-term partners.
Yes.
They're not looking for hookup culture.
Yes.
And so if you're a woman and you're looking for a long-term partner, you're going to want a guy who's going to be able to manage money effectively. Because money is one of the biggest predictors of divorce. So if you are because think about how much stress is involved if both people have to work at a high level in order just to sustain their day-to-day needs. So essentially, living paycheck to paycheck. And I understand like a lot of people have to start off doing this, but the reality is that if you do that for 10, 15 years and you consistently save, and the other thing that is kind of a hack is instead of staying with the same company, I think it's really important every 2 to 3 years to go somewhere else. And the reason that is that the amount of raise that you're going to get from going to a different company is going to be higher than if you would have stayed at the same job.
Yeah, I do think that more Gen Zers are doing that, because I definitely saw that, at least in the industry that I worked in prior to this, being a physical therapist. It was literally every 2 to 3 years that I changed my job, and that was pretty standard.
But that's smart. Because instead of getting a 3% raise, you can go in and saying, okay,
like 10,
I have
15.
I have 3 more years experience. So, and something like being a PT is a good skill to have, and there's not a lot of them out there. So you're in demand. So you can then say, I want, 10%, 15% more.
We could definitely ask for that, and it was way more likely. You're not going to be able to go into your boss's office at your current job and get that sort of raise.
Exactly. No way.
No.
So thinking about doing that, because the reality is that most employers see you as replaceable anyways.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah,
use that to your advantage. So I think, there's a few strategies here. Live beneath your means, whatever that is. And I know like that may suck at first because your means are not a lot.
And I think the concern, right, is that guys would feel like they don't have that money then to even spend on dating, right? Or to just buy gifts for a girl that they're interested in, or to buy the things that they think the woman will be attracted to. But
I think you can still do that. But, the other thing, too, is that when it comes to gifts, like that should be reserved for like their birthday or Christmas.
Absolutely.
And not even Valentine's Day, because I think it's BS. So take them out to a nice dinner on Valentine's Day and give them a card. But
the truth is, what kind of woman are you looking for?
Exactly.
Because I think that the majority of women, and definitely high quality women that are in their 20s, they are definitely looking for relationships long term, and they are not going to want to see you spending your money. Like, they probably know how much you're bringing in, if you're already in a relationship together. Yes. And honestly, like when I was that age, if I saw a man spending like that, that I was with, that would be unattractive. That would be risky.
Exactly.
That tells me like even my money is at risk. If I go on and marry that person and they can't manage money, I'm tied to them financially.
Yes, exactly.
So the women that don't care about that, like that are super attracted to that, I think it's because they only have you in short-term mindedness.
Potentially, or they're just ignorant.
Could be
the fact that you don't want to get in a routine where you're sprinting on a treadmill.
Yeah. But the honest truth is that type of woman that really cares about materialism is going to leave you as soon as you are having trouble maintaining it.
Yeah.
So what do you want,
Yeah, especially if you're married, then, you're really in trouble.
Yeah.
But even if you're not, if the money goes, so shall she. And so that's something that if you, and I really believe in intelligent, I hate using these terms high quality and low quality, but, I think our audience kind of knows what we mean when we say that. But a high quality woman, actually, let's just define that for a second. So for me, a high quality woman would be somebody that is intelligent, who is going to be feminine, that is going to be strong in her own way, because women, they have to give birth, and they have to, they do the majority of the early stage development, skills. And so that takes a lot of strength, emotionally stable, and, trustworthy, so these are the kind of things we're talking about when we come to a high value woman versus someone who's a low value woman would be somebody who is really emotionally unstable, somebody who is bad with money themselves, somebody who's super materialistic, somebody, who's into drug use, going being a club goer.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the college age either. I'm talking about kind of post-college, because I think, everybody in college kind of parties. But so, in looking at those kind of general definitions, so a high-quality woman who's intelligent is going to be smart and say, okay, this guy may not have a lot of money right now, but I see that he's working hard and he's built a skill and he's living beneath his means and he's investing his money. That's a guy that I would want to have in my future.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's
versus
key.
A guy who drives a Benz when he's 22, but he has a $900 a month car payment.
Yeah, I mean, that woman might be foolish enough to think that that guy maybe is bringing in enough money for that, but eventually...
But let's say the guy's a general contractor, or he works construction, and then he does DoorDash on the side.
Yeah.
And,
like she's going to know that.
Yeah, she's going to know
doesn't line up.
Exactly, that he's at best living paycheck to paycheck, but most likely in debt.
I think a lot of guys, more average guys, are not really doing the flashy stuff, right? They're not buying the crazy car and the Rolexes. That's not it. I think that what they're running into is they do find a girl, and then what comes after that?
The big house.
The big ring.
Oh, yeah, the big ring, exactly.
Big ring, and we know, a lot of women's expectations out there.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, that's key right there, is that, if you are getting to that point, she knows how much you make. And so if you're making, let's just go up from the average. Let's say you're making $50,000 and she expects a $15,000 ring.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. And you should be able to tell her that's ridiculous.
Yes.
And if she's not okay with that, even after you educate her, then she's too materialistic. And I really would think seriously about getting involved with somebody long term.
Yeah.
But then even after that, I think it does kind of tell her expectations of then wedding.
Yeah, exactly.
House.
Yes.
Babies.
Yeah, and you can easily pay $50,000 for a wedding nowadays.
Absolutely.
Easily, if not more.
Yeah.
And so.
And you're paying for everyone else to have a party, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And you hope you get enough appliances that you can put in your house.
Enough toasters.
Yes. That's why when I go to weddings, I always give people cash.
That's really smart. Yeah.
Because it's something that, for me, I see it as, it's a big party, but I want to pay my way in there.
It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think people appreciate that more, to be honest, because then, then they can use that towards the cost of the wedding.
I think so.
But going back to the ring thing for a second, that's a tough one, because more and more women are expecting these crazy, expensive rings.
3-carat solitaires.
Yeah. And, what does that go for? $40,000, $50,000?
Yeah. A 3-carat? Probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably.
And the reality is that, for most guys, that's their salary for the entire year.
Yeah.
And to me, that's just status signaling from women. But if you, for example, if you have to go into debt to get, an engagement ring, then that's problematic.
Yeah, it's too much.
Because then if you decide to have children after that, you're going to still be paying off this ring. And so, and I think this is one of the kind of fundamental things that we're dealing with right now, is that I think in the past, women always wanted nice rings. But it was never an expectation.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they were just happy to get that partnership, that connection. And so it wasn't as important.
Yeah, and a lot of times there were family rings being passed down.
Yes.
And they saw value in that. I think that's really hard for some women to accept now.
Yeah.
That
I
have
think
those
that's
high
a great
expectations.
idea. Because think about it, if you have your grandmother's ring, your grandmother's, on her way out or she's gone.
Yeah.
And, I would think that would be a good, especially, because something like a wedding ring, or excuse me, an engagement ring is timeless, right? So you can look at one from the 20s, not this 20s, the 1920s, and they could be just as as beautiful.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
if that's an option in your family, like, take that. And if you're a woman, and what would be the biggest, knock against that? Would they say, oh, you didn't invest any money? Or was it the fact that it's old or outdated, or that you're just being cheap? Like,
I guess it could be any of those things. But again, like if she knows you, and she understands like the meaning behind it, like especially that last reason, because she just thinks that you're being cheap, like that shouldn't even be crossing her mind at all. So, I mean, I think that the only valid reason why she may not like it is because she wants her personal touch or personal preference of
But couldn't that
jewelry.
even be altered by a jeweler potentially?
Yeah, very much so. Like, yeah, they could just take the stones from it. That would be an excellent way to do it, actually.
Yeah, because a lot of times the bands are not that expensive.
Yeah, like you could propose with the original ring and then tell her I'm going to make this into whatever you want with these stones. And that's pretty low cost.
Yeah, exactly. If you're going to even go that route at all.
Yeah.
But what I think that does for that high quality woman is that it shows stability in the guy. It says, this is a guy who's got his stuff together. And this is somebody that I can see potentially being long-term as being a good provider.
Yeah.
And this is evidenced by how he lives his life when he's not even with me.
Right. And that's a good point, because the only thing with the engagement band is that you want it to line up with your character, your typical spending, right? So like if he has a Rolex that is worth $50,000 and then he doesn't spend more than a couple grand on a ring for her, like that, that's a mismatch.
Yeah.
And then she is going to feel like you just don't care to invest in a gift for her.
Sure. Well, also it would show that, like what's the average guy cannot afford a $50,000 Rolex.
No.
And if that was so important to them, let's say they were super into watches or something, and they decided that they were going to go into debt over something like that, to me, that's a red flag, because what you're doing is you're putting a material item over your mental health, your stress levels, and, your financial security.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing that we haven't really talked that much about with building of debt, especially with the typical theme of get engaged, wedding, house, kids, and especially like childcare, if you're both working or if you go down to one income household, that's huge. And your stress is already increased naturally.
Of course.
With kids. So that's even more reason why, like when you're in your 20s, and you're single or you're just dating, you just have a girlfriend, like you got to focus on saving, because it gets way more challenging into your 30s, 40s, whenever you have kids.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And most women are in the workplace now. So the way I look at it is that if you were really disciplined with your finances and then you decide to partner with somebody and she is also disciplined, you're going to have twice that income. And so that will also, be enough to cover the cost of children and still invest. I think what a lot of parents end up getting caught up in is then the keeping up with the Joneses thing, like going to Disney World every year, which is, think of how much money that could cost for a family of 4.
Yeah.
If you did it every year.
It's a lot.
And I'm not saying, you don't take your kids to Disney World ever,
No.
but maybe once or twice in their entire childhood, like that's sufficient.
Or you can find a way. So I've taken my kids to Disney World the last 3 times I've gone to Florida. So
you're
I could
a baller
technically,
now, Emily, so it doesn't matter.
but I'm cheap. So, my
you're
parents.
You're not cheap, you're frugal.
I'm frugal. That's true. My parents live down there.
Yes.
So we stay with them and we go one day to Disney World. We do one park.
Yeah.
So that's really, I'm exhausted
that's about
after one day. That's all I can handle.
Exactly.
And it's a lot less money.
Yes. But I've known people who've traveled all over the world on real low amounts of money because, of where they stay and, that type of thing. But I think if it's an individual, it's a group of guys, let's say, and, go to Go to a camping trip. Maybe you like fishing. Maybe you like hiking. Those type of things. Or if you never experienced that, try it. I think being in nature is super restorative.
It pulls you away from all the materialism. It's great, if you can find hobbies that you enjoy that are very low cost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can go camp, in the Adirondack Mountains and hike and fish and canoe and, do all kinds of different fun things for a relatively inexpensive cost.
And then you find a girl that also enjoys those things.
Exactly.
Right? And then that would be your future enjoyment together.
Yes.
And it continues to be low cost.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, the initial investment would be like the tent and the supplies.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily cheap these days because I have all that stuff.
Yeah,
but, once you spend it once, then you can use it for many years.
That would be an example of a good investment.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be using it for a long period of time.
It's true.
Especially if it's high quality stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always, advocate if you're going to buy something that you're looking for durability, it's probably going to be more expensive. So invest in that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't fall apart.
It's like the same thing with dates, right? You want to be able to have hobbies and things that you enjoy that you can share, with somebody. And she should enjoy those things also, or else it's not really a good match. And then even if you go to like a cheaper restaurant, we were talking about this yesterday, like the restaurants that you used to go to when you were young.
Yeah.
It's like the standard like Applebee's, Outback.
Yeah.
And I've seen so many TikToks of like the woman going on the date to the Outback and then she's like sneering the whole time and not happy because it doesn't cost very much.
Yeah.
Not that much to go out.
No.
And that's like, that should be a test right there, or it should at least be a huge red flag that she's not going to be the right one for you, like long term.
Yeah, exactly.
Because she's focused on that materialism. She's just going to, because I think there's a high risk. Like when you end up with somebody that drives you away from your goals, especially your financial goals, I mean, you will never reach where you want to get.
Absolutely not.
They can totally drag you down.
And think about it, the reality is that most relationships don't work out long term, most. And even if you do get married, the average marriage in the U.S. is 8 years long. So it's something that, and I'm not saying that, like all relationships are doomed, forget about it, whatever. But if you're dating somebody who has these high expectations, that's going to interfere with your long-term plan of getting to a point where you then have options.
That's what creates financial freedom.
Exactly.
Down the line.
Yes.
I do think, like, I follow a lot of creators that give financial advice targeting different age groups. Like, I follow this one specific one, and he'll say, if you're in your 20s and you want to build wealth, do A, B, C, or if you're in your 30s or 40s, really realistic approach, really straightforward.
Yes.
So the information is
get
out
rich
there.
Quick schemes.
No, it's mostly investing into the stock market, and then he recommends like specific index funds. So, and it's like all information that I've heard from other creators. So I think that's key, is educating yourself, not listening to just one person. Like get a variety of people out there giving you information. When you keep on hearing the same message over and over, I think that's kind of a good clue that that's a pretty stable approach.
Exactly.
But I think like just getting started too in your 20s, because I think a lot of people fall into not investing at all into a 401k because they feel like they have forever.
Or the bare minimum,
Bare minimum.
Yeah, exactly. And it goes by quick.
It really does.
And so, that's the point that we're trying to drive home here is saying, yes, you want some balance, but are you willing to put in a lot of money into something that is going to be a depreciating asset, or it's just going to make you feel good for a short period of time? Is that worth the stress that's going to come along with then having to repay that, or just having to live paycheck to paycheck because of that?
Think about the reasons why the manosphere pushes that, and I think that a lot of them really believe that all women, want that materialism, that they just want that strong provider, and that's you proving to them that you can provide.
Yeah.
But it's so false. Like think about the biggest athletes, and where they've met many of their wives, at least the ones that are successfully married for long durations, or just anyone that's like a multimillionaire that has had a successful marriage for a long time, over and over again, I hear that they have met her back in high school.
Yeah.
Back before they had any wealth.
Yeah, or college, or, but not because they were a professional athlete and they met a woman on Instagram.
Nope. It was, maybe she saw his potential just in general.
Yeah.
But that's what we're talking about. Like, you do want a woman to value the potential.
Yes.
But also respect you saving money and not just freely spending.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the potential can also be seen in your work ethic and the discipline with your spending and things like that. Because over time, as long as you don't, your IQ doesn't go down and you don't have some kind of illness or disability, the reality is that you're going to ascend as far as your finances. So there's going to be a time when you can do some of this stuff if it's really important to you. But I think it's about when you do that.
And so, like, any woman that, like what we were saying is our definition of high quality, is going to appreciate that.
Yeah. There was this guy, so my dad attended Kansas State, and so I was always a Kansas State fan as a result of that. And his name was Jordy Nelson. He played in the NFL for the Packers for a bunch of years. And he was such an interesting story because he kind of came from, rural Kansas and he grew up on a farm. So what he would do is he saved all of his money and he bought a farm and he worked on the farm in the off season.
That's so cool.
And so by the time he retired, he had saved up all the money and he had like a 10-year career. So he saved all the millions that he made. And he was just a farm boy and he continued to work on the farm to this day. And now as a family, but he's going to be financially secure for the rest of his life.
Absolutely.
So he didn't really stray far from his roots rather than getting sucked into the whole culture of going to the strip club and making it rain and, going to all these...
even clubs and, buying the champagne.
Yeah, the bottle service and, the exclusive areas and things like that where you can easily drop $10,000, $20,000 a night.
Yeah.
That type of thing. And obviously these guys are complete outliers. So I don't really honestly have that much sympathy for them, especially when, we're speaking to the average guy. And, I would consider myself that person who is that average guy. So if I can do it, I really believe that most people can. As long as they're hardworking, as long as they're disciplined, and as long as they educate themselves on what's the best path for them to go.
What's interesting, I read an article recently, and it was about the most common job of millionaires in the U.S. I think it was just for the U.S.
Okay.
What do you think the most common job
you put me
was?
on the spot here.
I know.
Most common job?
But think about like a typical, like all this needs to be is 1 million in the bank, right? Most people that have that amount of money are going to be older.
Yeah.
They're going to be probably retired.
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, which is probably wrong, but would it be sales?
Kind of close because that's like a basic job too. But I'll just tell you, teachers.
Really? Okay.
Teachers.
Wow.
And I mean, we know
disciplined teachers then.
Disciplined teachers. And maybe that's why, because a lot of them are disciplined already being in that field. But
that's surprising to me.
I know, because the salary is pretty average, unless they're moving up the ranks, to administration.
Or depending where you live, it could be below average.
That is very true. But I think that's telling. I mean, typically teachers have pensions, so that's helpful. But I mean, I don't think that any teacher typically is living in $1 million home.
No. And
they're not flashing it. So
exactly.
I think that's sort of the message that should be put out there is more of the average person and the success that they have, into retirement.
Yes.
And how they were able to get there.
Yeah.
Because it was not by overly spending.
Exactly. So I think it's fine to kind of live vicariously through some of these creators or things that you see, but I think for yourself, I think it's being realistic about saying what's my long-term plan, and, how do I want to live my life? And, hey, listen, if you want to like go into debt or you want to live paycheck to paycheck, more power to you. It's not my place to tell you how to live your life. But I'll tell you that having that financial freedom is a lot better as far as your mental health, as far as your physical health, as far as, just being able to sleep at night.
Yeah.
I think money can buy pleasure, but not happiness. Does that make sense?
Pleasure being more like short term.
Very short term.
Yeah.
And so if you have that mindset that it's not going to make you happy,
yeah.
What really makes people happy, this is my sincere belief, is doing fun activities with people that you love.
It's the relationships.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm a total believer in that.
But it's also having those experiences that you can do with them. Mm-hmm. And so, but when you're younger, again, like for guys, if you go camping and have a few beers and roast a hot dog on a stick and, just...
So much fun.
Yeah, you can just have a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah.
At this point in my life, that probably wouldn't be particularly attractive.
No.
But when I was in my 20s, one of the best days of my life was a whole group of friends and I went to the Adirondack Mountains and climbed the highest peak the first time. And we ran out of water, and it was like, really this hardship. But we bonded as a result of that. Mm-hmm. And it was that combination of doing something that was really, because, that's like ends up being 11-hour hike.
Yeah.
So it's something that, and especially if you're not, supplied with enough water. Mm-hmm. So, but the bonding experience I had with these guys kind of going through that was just something that I look back on now. And that was, 20 some years ago, saying, that was a great day. That was a great trip overall. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't, we barely spent any money at all.
Yeah. Well, that's the message, that we're speaking to, covering up the other messages that we don't think is really the best for especially young guys in their 20s.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I think that's where, if they're getting the wrong messaging in their 20s, they're making mistakes that are going to be very long lasting.
Yes.
And it's harder to recover financially in your 30s and 40s.
Yeah. What I'd like this podcast to be, and this is one of the reasons, that we got together, is we wanted to get to the point of being a voice of reason in the manosphere. So we're trying to be as honest as possible, but at the same time, go against the grain as far as some of the things that, because you and I are both older than, most of kind of the manosphere creators in general. So we have that life experience on our side, to be able to do that. And
just having a male and female perspective together.
Absolutely,
I don't think I've seen that.
No, no, exactly. Because right now there's still this gender war that's kind of going on, at least when it comes to platforms like YouTube and TikTok. So I think that's the other thing, that the barrier, that people can look at us and say, two people can work together side by side that are of opposite gender and hopefully create decent content that they can utilize in their life. And so I think that's the goal of this podcast, is to inform people and to get them to the point where they're really thinking clearly about the decisions that they make.
Yeah, and I think it's especially important for us to dissect things that we are hearing from the manosphere or any other creators that we really disagree with, and to just spend time dissecting it and giving a different message that I think we both agree is just healthier for men to receive.
Exactly. And I know for a fact, because I mingled with some of these people that are really big content creators, and I'm not going to name names, but I know that they are having to produce mass amounts of content in order to have their lifestyles that they keep up with. And
to have that image.
Exactly, to have the image. It's almost kind of like the age-old, I don't know if anyone's ever, you've ever talked about this to anybody, but, when it comes to realtors, like they always have to drive a nice car because it's the
the image.
It's the image of saying, I'm already successful, so I can either sell your house or I can, find you a really good house.
Yeah.
But I think what happens a lot of times with these manosphere creators, or probably just creators in general, is that they kind of have to feel like they're living in these big cities, in these expensive places, in order to kind of show that image that they are successful. Where the reality is that, to me, true success would be creating the good content that they are, but not having to live that lifestyle, because it's gonna run out.
It will, yeah.
At some point.
It's definitely not in their best interest, and again, it just feeds into
Consumerism.
that image and and the message.
Exactly. About you have to have this, or this, and if you don't, then you're not successful.
Yeah.
And to me, true success is having fulfillment in life and happiness, or however you want to define that.
Spoken like a true therapist.
Well,
and it's true. I agree.
Yes.
I really do.
Well, we only have one time to go around.
Yeah.
And so it's about being smart about how we go about that, and really trying to understand that is where true contentment comes in.
Yeah.
It's not buying the great car. It's, because after a couple weeks, just a car.
Yeah.
It is. It's something where if you have to feel good about yourself because of your bank's balance, then that says a lot about your value system versus saying, okay, like I do want to get there, but I want to get there for the right reasons, so I can have freedom and I can have stress-free life, but I'm not going to put my identity into that.
Yeah. I really hope that guys receive this message, and that they find value in it. I think I'll be really interested to know in the comments section what guys think of this, if this has made them think twice about decisions that they're making in their lives.
Especially the young guys.
Yeah.
I think, we had a 19-year-old make a bunch of comments. And so we're starting to dip a little bit lower. And for those guys, especially who may not have, dads in their life, I think, financial literacy is so important. And, take what we've said and then, expand it, because there are a lot of great channels out there that talk about this.
Absolutely. If you guys have seen value in this video, please hit the subscribe button so that you can catch the next one. Thanks.